live on Radio 1 FM 90, which is broadcasting from the Central House here in Kampala along the Store Street. But we're also coming live on our website, which is www.radio1fm90.com. On that website, you click on the icon with the word Listen Live. We're also live on the different radio listening apps, which includes TuneIn, AfroMobile, UTV channel, Radio Garden, and Stream Afrique. This radio station is also live on your TV set. That's if you have a DSTV connection, you look for audio channel 897. There are two ways to contribute to this discussion. One of the ways is to call in. Time allowing, I'll open the phone lines for you to do so. But you can progressively join this discussion and contributing in terms of question or comments using the WhatsApp line, which is 0703090. Today, we'll be looking at how we can draw strategies to tackle the growing burden of teenage pregnancies in our country. Now, Uganda is one of the countries with the highest child marriage and teenage pregnancy rates in sub-Saharan Africa. And according to statistics that we have seen, we record about 32,000 teenage pregnancies per month. Now, according to the Uganda Demographic and Health Survey, 34% of young girls are married off before the age of 18, 7.3% before the age of 15, and close to their 18th birthday, resulting in about those statistics I've shared there, 32,000 pregnancies, which are recorded every month. So these statistics are reflecting the fact that there are early marriages in our country, and therefore young girls are giving birth every month. Now, the latest report shows that although progress has been made to end child marriage, the practice still remains embedded, especially in different societies, with 43% of women aged between 25 to 49 years reporting that they were married off before they were 18 years. Now, there has been a call for concerted efforts to address this challenge, and tonight we'll be hearing from some key stakeholders on what they are doing, the gaps, and what can be done to actually bridge them. I have three guests in studio. Let me introduce Senior Superintendent of Police, Andeke Esther Tumsime. She's from the Child and Family Protection Unit of the Uganda Police Force. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening, listeners.
Also in studio, Counsel Geraldine Akubu. She's a legal practitioner, advocate of the High Court of Uganda and other subordinate courts. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening, listeners.
Also in studio, Mr. Henry Semakula, Principal Education Officer, Minister of Education and Sports, who will also be giving us the views from the Ministry of Education. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Kenneth. Good evening, our dear listeners.
All right, we all know the challenge that we're facing as a country, looking at the statistics that we have, but we also know there have been efforts for very many years to deal with this challenge. There's been legal mechanisms, there have been policies put in place, but let's start by understanding why this challenge has still persisted. Let me begin with Afande from the police. What's your view?
Well, thank you very much. The statistics sound alarming and not nice at all. We are duty-bound as police to protect life and property, to prevent and detect crime. I want to emphasize on preventing and detecting crime because it is cheaper and easier than the other side of prosecution and the rest. As population increases, we expect crime to rise. Those two move concurrently. Development has an impact. Every phase of development or stage of development has what comes along with it. The task on us as law enforcement is to match up all those different spectrums. Development, population, name them. It wouldn't be a surprise that the crime that we are calling teenage pregnancies, for us in law enforcement, we categorize that under defilements, the rapes, very many issues there. In incest, that is where the teenage pregnancies are coming from. It could be through defilement, it could be as a result of rape, it could be as a result of incest. That is how it comes about. There are very many factors. and I believe us as stakeholders here, each of us will give a hand and we digest. For me, I would begin by saying, in as far as us as parents are concerned, we have rings of responsibility. Rings of responsibility begins with the parent home. Our roles as parents, trends have changed in such a way that father and mother are all vending. They are looking for something to survive due to one reason or the other. It's inevitable. Now, in that, there is this one person who is a child, who is left in that dilemma. Even me, I'm a parent, but I am here in the studio. Who is taking care of my child now? Now, that means there is need for countermeasures that even as parents, we are having the children. We should plan accordingly. How do we manage these children? How do we manage this gap? Despite the fact that we need to survive or to look for a living, how do we manage this gap? Us as parents, that is the first ring of responsibility I'm giving. The second ring of responsibility I would give is the community. It plays a big role. For us as law enforcement, we have what we call police no muntu wa bulijjo. That is the second ring of responsibility. The role of the community. Where I am not, like I'm in studio now, there is someone who is watching my child. There is a teacher who is watching my child at school. There is a boda man who is watching a fellow boda man with my child, with that child. There is a shopkeeper who is watching my child stand along the road. There is a passerby. That is the second ring of responsibility. The community. What have we done as the community? We are now on, everyone on his own, God for us all. The third one, of course, is us. The mandated persons, the duty bound, that is the police. And that is where I know you will ask, and the listeners will ask, but police, what have you done? When these cases are reported, they are just our annual crime report, 2023. I don't know whether I should repeat the statistics the way they are defined clearly.
Briefly, for us to understand the magnitude of the problem.
2023 annual crime report. We had 12,771 cases of defilement reported. Those were only reported, but we have thousands that were not reported. They are either at home, resolved in the community, a survivor somewhere, a victim has just kept quiet because they have nowhere to turn to. Quite a number of reasons. The community, the society has shut them down and they should not talk. So there are some cases, but so far we had 12,771 reported. Out of those, we had 5,564 go to court. That is now the role of the jailers, the police. What have we done? But from those that went to court, we had 940 convicted. That is a positive for us. It is a positive for us, though it's not enough. It's a positive, but it's not enough. We have 38 acquitted, 414 dismissed, 4,172 still pending. Now, we also have cases that didn't proceed completely from the reporting stage due to very many factors. If time allows, I believe the stakeholders will share and they will explain to us why do these cases not proceed. They will also either mirror into the police or the police will also speak. We will also speak it out. We have 4,805 that were still undergoing inquiry. This always haunts the public. Inquiry. Why doesn't this inquiry stop? When does it stop? Of course, it is either denial of justice, delay of justice. Before you know, this girl who was pregnant has already given birth. She's already a mother. These are the mothers, you say, the statistics you were giving, that they became mothers when they were teenagers. So by the time the case is proceeding, someone says, no, I already have 3 children. I'm no longer interested. So they will have been denied justice. It's painful, but us as law enforcement and those that are duty bound, we really look forward to doing better.
All right.
Yes.
All right. I'll be getting back to you on some specifics, but let's hear from Mr. Semakula from the Ministry of Education and Sports. Well, what's your perspective on this issue of teenage pregnancies?
Thank you very much. Good evening once again, our dear listeners. Just to quickly touch the question asked. My colleague from police has just been trying to explain why is this challenge persisting. And to me, as an educationist, there are several factors just to add on what he has said. The issue of parental laxity can't be ruled out. When some of us were growing up, the whole village was in charge of the growing up child. But also mother and father had time to talk to their children about issues of growing up, growth and development, issues of adolescence, and so on. But today, they are too busy. When we recall the times of the lockdown, this is when we got higher teenage pregnancies. Many times people out there say, you people in education, what are you doing? What are you doing? The girls are getting pregnant. But it is in the lockdown that we had more pregnancies when the schools were locked. That therefore means that when they're in school, there's some control that takes place. There's a senior woman, there's a senior man, there's law, don't do this, don't do that. There are restrictions, there's information. But now when they were home, they didn't have much. And even when the lockdown was done, of course, many of the times they are home, no more information coming in. Permissiveness of our society is also another challenge. Just like it was in the past, people would mind, where is this girl going at this time with this man? Where is this old man with this young man? Or what is this young man doing with this young woman? But of late, nobody will mind. The young people will do whatever they want. They'll visit their homes. Sometimes they disguise as even relatives. They go for night overs. What follows may really be challenging. But also the medical people tell us that there's a rising early sex debut, that our children now get into sexual matters too early. And many times when they get there, they don't have information. So they just risk anything. They risk anything, and one of the end results is definitely teenage pregnancy. But also the issue of having lesser information on reproductive health, lesser information on health education, lesser education about their sexuality. We at Ministry have over the years attempted to give some information. Many of us, for example, recall the PSA program, which was basically on HIV, but the general content was also talking about growth and development. And it was friendly. As we moved along, we integrated what we call sexuality education as part of the curriculum. But again, some parts of the community didn't welcome it. They thought we are going to spoil the children with information on sex.
Exciting them,
Certainly, yes, exciting them. Maybe they could have been right. They could have been right, but that was not our intention. Our intention was to give age-appropriate information related to their being woman, to their being man. I am a girl. I should be informed that when I reach 10, 12, 11, then I'm in my menarche. I'm supposed to menstruate. And what follows at this level, I could even get pregnant if I risk like this. That is part of the information.
What's your official position on that? Because I've seen in some schools where they're doing that under what they call counseling. You know, they speak to boys, they speak to girls. So is it something that is being rolled out in all schools, or each school is at liberty to do what they want?
Speaking to girls and speaking to boys may not even have any say on the subject sexuality education. But speaking to boys and speaking to girls is a requirement from Ministry of Education that on top of academics, on top of teaching the economics, the biology, the chemistry, let our teachers also talk to the young people about their growth and development challenges. I've just talked about the girls. Let the teacher, senior woman or any other teacher, talk to them about menstruation, for example. But also the boys, let a senior man also talk to them about their hygiene, for example, and any other issues that they may need. But before I conclude on the whys, there is also one thing I see, which is about the too much entertainment in our midst. And the entertainment doesn't seem to be controlled. You find disco happening every day, a street bash here, a street bash there, an overnight here, an overnight there.
Even on our mobile phones.
And our young people are all over the place. And of course, the peer pressure that also follows. When they go, they have gone to dance, yes, but the pressure now pushes them into drinking. The drinking makes them forget, and then they want to venture into another area. which actually exposes them to the possibility of getting pregnant. Pornography, which is all over the place through the social media you've talked about, we have a challenge. We don't really know much of what our young people see. And some of the things they see are really these ones. And maybe just to wind it up for now about why we see this challenge moving up, is that the young people are also seemingly behaving so reckless in the disguise of enjoying life. They enjoy and risk so much. There's one famous activity whose name I don't want to mention, but in that activity, majority of the people, the clients, were 15 to 25. And we are told that when it came to issues of getting relationships,
those that actually are working. As a legal practitioner, how are we doing in that regard? Are we doing well in terms of the legal framework, but even action to ensure access to justice?
Okay. Thank you, Kenneth. Before I go into the laws, I also want to give some of the causes.
All right. Why it is persisting.
Why it is persisting. He mentioned that some of our children are, in fact, engaging in sex very early. Very, very early. But we also have issues that are more legal related. Early marriages. Some of our customs, traditional practices, religious beliefs promote early marriage. If you have early marriage, if a girl child is getting married before she's an adult, of course you're going to have teenage pregnancy. The level of education, he talked about keeping girls in school helps because it plays a role of controlling behavior of the children who are in school. So you will find that the girls that drop out of school or who are not in school will tend to get pregnant earlier than the boys who are in school. So it's important that we keep them in school. We have issues of overuse of contraceptives. We have issues of things to do with where the girl is staying. If it's the kind of environment where sexual activity is high, then of course that such a girl will likely get pregnant early. In terms of laws and where the issues could be, I believe that we have adequate laws. We have the Constitution, we have the Children's Act, we have the Penal Code Act, which criminalizes actions that will lead to teenage pregnancy. We have the Domestic Violence Act, we have the Anti-Pornography Act. So we have the laws in place. In fact, Uganda is one of those countries that has very good laws. We have solid laws in place. So where is the gap? Where is the problem? We have several hurdles to implementation of this legislation. Officer Deke mentioned earlier, for instance, issues of limited reporting of cases. When rape, incest, defilement happens, many times victims don't report, either out of fear. Some of them don't even know that there are avenues where they can receive, where they can get redress when something like that happens. We have people fear some of the institutions that are in place. Some people fear to go to the police, especially if the pregnancy is a result of something that has happened. If the sexual activity is happening at home, in the case where it is incest, you are not going to go and report your father or your uncle or your big brother to the police. So people fear to approach some of these institutions. Apart from going to the police, some people fear court, the court processes, the way they are asked questions in court, and the whole there's a timidness about going to court. You're going to expose yourself in court. You're going to go to court. You'll be asked embarrassing questions that may embarrass you, the victim. So people fear that. Some people fear that. We have issues of not trusting some of the institutions. If you look at, for instance, the traditional institutions that we have within our communities to deal with these issues, people fear to go and report. Then they fear for this matter to be heard by the traditional, say, the clan leaders, the local council, the local leaders within our communities. People don't want to go and report. People fear discrimination. Okay? You go and report, and then you have to deal with matters to do with discrimination. Yeah, discrimination in terms of boys. The girl who is pregnant, you are going to. Apart from discrimination, there's first of all stigma that you're involving yourself in sexual activity. Yeah? So when a girl child gets pregnant, she's going to fear the stigma. So it's going to be very hard for her to come out and report such a case. And this stigma also many times leads to many of them terminating their pregnancies because they fear and because of this stigma. We have Uganda, we are not a very litigious society. So apart from the fact that on the one hand, not many people seek to litigate or seek legal redress, even the criminal justice system itself, the way it is set up, the people who access it are few, and we have a problem of I don't know if I should call it weak litigation. We don't. You had the statistics of the number of cases that were reported, the number of cases that were taken to court, the number of cases that were convictions. Yeah, the statistics that Officer Deke read out, they were quite worrying.
Indeed.
Yes. So when you're dealing with that, then sometimes you say to yourself, why should I bother? You know. And we have cultural and traditional practices and norms, which also don't encourage people to report. First of all, to identify that some of these things are crimes, are offenses, are wrongs within our communities. So if you have, the family has already given the go-ahead for a girl child to get married, to be married off, how is this girl supposed to see this as a wrong, or that there's anything that's criminal that has happened? It becomes very complicated and difficult. Even where a person decides to seek legal redress, we have very limited knowledge about the laws, about the relevant laws. We have very limited access or even availability of legal aid. Where are you going to find a lawyer?
All right.
To go and help you pursue your case.
All right.
In court. We have many issues that limit us. We have limited trust in the traditional dispute resolution that I already alluded to. We have impunity when we report these cases. The structures that are in place, I'm sure Officer Deke will tell us, the structures don't support reporting of sexual violence.
All right. One of the things you raised was the issue of contraceptives. Recently, we saw reports that very many girls are dying, and if they were allowed to access contraceptives, probably there would be, some sort of protection from them getting pregnant. But, there's a whole debate about access to contraceptives for young girls. But when we return from the break, we'll continue looking at some of these aspects and also looking at the different policies from the Ministry of Education, but also from the police, what they're doing and what needs to do, what kind of support do they need to actually deal with what she described as a crime, much as we are referring to it as teenage pregnancies. Now, stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90, but keep your comments coming via the WhatsApp line 0703 090 090. Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90. Today, we are looking at how we can tackle the growing burden of teenage pregnancies in our country. Reports continue to indicate that very many young girls are becoming pregnant. One of the push factors, or one of the main causes, is early marriages. Children being married off before the legal age, which is known by our Constitution as 18 years. Reports indicating that each month we get about 32,000 pregnancies. Some of these could be unwanted, or some of these could be avoided, according to experts. And I have stakeholders here in studio to try and understand what can be done. Here in the studio, we have a representative from the Ministry of Education and Sports, who is Mr. Henry Semakula. We have Counsel Geraldine Akubu, who is a legal practitioner, and Senior Superintendent of Police, Esther Adeke Tumsime, who is from the Child and Family Protection Unit of the Uganda Police Force. Mr. Semakula, the Ministry of Education and Sports has a number of policies that are geared towards addressing some of these issues. If you can share with us some of these and what exactly is happening as far as implementation is concerned.
Okay, thank you very much. And just before I get into policy again, my sister, the lawyer, indicated something to do with the culture and reporting. And I recalled that in many of our communities, there's a breadwinner, there's a head of family, there's an authority. But in the unfortunate circumstances, it could be that authority who is actually the cause of the pregnancy. So coming to report that uncle who gives you fees, that auntie and so on is really a challenge. Otherwise, getting to policy, of course, we may have a number of policies, but we also do have a number of guidelines and frameworks concerning generally sexual reproductive health. But in particular, now that you ask about the teenage pregnancy issue, one of our policies is actually a policy in the offing. It is the National School Health Policy. It's been on table for some good time. It has been discussed over the years. Indeed. But even before it comes out, there are a few of its requirements that are already happening that have a connection to that National Draft School Health Policy. Because you'll find that, for example, the guidelines called the National Sexuality Education Framework were rooted in that draft policy. Before the policy could come, we said which other things could be done. Then you also have guidelines on menstrual hygiene management. We realized that schools maybe were taking this as a small case. And yes, all these things around teenage pregnancy also have a connotation to understanding menstruation and handling menstruation. We also do have the gender in education policy that really addresses a number of issues, especially around girls in education. We have a national strategy for girls' education. And as you get to the details of this strategy, it really mentions the hindrances to girls' education, including early marriages and teenage pregnancy, and the strategies to handle them. Then we have guidelines for prevention and management of teenage pregnancy and re-entry of child mothers. This is a guideline that came out around 2020 at the peak of COVID. But then it came at the right time because we're getting so many teenage mothers. And as a country, we thought that much as they could have committed a wrong, or they could have been raped, or any other circumstances could have caused their rape, let's not condemn them to the world. Let's give an opening for re-entry to school, but a guided re-entry. And indeed, when you get to the guidelines, they tell when can such a girl identified as pregnant be given leave to go for maternity attention? When can she think of getting back if she's to get back? Under which circumstances does she get back? Should she get back to the same school? But of course, there's all the guidance, including the psychosocial support that she must receive, including the involvement of parents to understand the circumstances that cause the pregnancy and try to avoid them, and so on and so forth. But we also have the National Strategic Plan on Violence Against Children in School, which also brings out so many forms of violence, as Council has highlighted, including defilement and rape and the other. We have guidelines for tracking, referral, response, and reporting of violence cases, which also takes care of issues where girls are raped or they are defiled to the extent of getting pregnant. We clearly show these girls which steps to take. Where do you report at school level? Where do you start from?
We have had incidents where staff of schools or teachers have been actually the culprits. What's the policy there? What do you do? How do you handle such cases?
Yes, indeed, you've heard that sometimes the cause is actually the teachers, although that is sometimes, as you said, because the police records will clearly tell us that there's a businessman somewhere also. There could be an LOC somewhere also.
This time around, we are looking at the teachers and the
there
staff.
could also be a religious person somewhere. There could also be a cultural leader. But of course, when those things happen, There are systems to take charge of the teachers. We have what we call the Teacher Code of Conduct, and indeed they have to be reminded. The Teacher Code of Conduct is preached to teachers even before they become teachers, because it is part of their training during training to become teachers. But we also have continuous professional development. We keep taking teachers through different emerging issues, whether academic or non-academic, and in the current circumstances, there have been so many continuous professional development courses on issues of teenage health, adolescent health, and emerging issues like cyberbullying, like mental health. So we keep recalling that maybe our teachers don't have the what they had in the beginning, the knowledge.
So when a teacher is a culprit, what do you do? There's a reason why I'm asking you.
Part of what we do is to go legal, and so the case is referred to the legal circles for handling. Otherwise, in our own context, you could have heard of issues like a disciplinary committee. They are called upon to face this disciplinary committee, which also does the process that they do. You must have heard of issues to do with interdiction, but it doesn't just happen instant.
You don't transfer teachers?
Transfer is not used as a punishment. Transfer is, by the way, not mandatory, but is one of the processes to expect of any public officer.
We have had in some situations where people committed crime and they are simply transferred.
Maybe in
as
some
a form
circumstances,
of punishment.
But in the Ministry of Education,
they keep growing.
The transfer is not a punishment to a teacher. No, the legal process must take shape. The transfer is a normal happening after attaining a certain age not a certain age, but a certain number of years, according to the appointment. And indeed, when teachers are being appointed, they are told to be ready to work, to work in any part of Uganda.
All right.
But there's also a lot of continuous guidance and counseling to the teachers to just make them avoid circumstances that can lead them into such evil.
All right. Let's hear from Afande. Looking at the statistics you shared earlier, like Geraldine said, they are a little bit alarming and very concerning. There are so many cases, fewer are handled, and even when it comes to prosecution, they are very, 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 very few. What would you want as a police to actually become more effective? Is it a justice and law order sector challenge? It's a general problem? Is it something that the police can handle if certain issues are actually addressed? What could be the problem? What do you want the country to do for you to be able to effectively deal with this problem?
The country to do for us as the police?
As the police force.
I think we need to work hand in hand, not per se the country to do for us. But I think it's achievable. We can.
The reason I'm asking that is to understand if you have any gaps as a force to be able to respond to some of these cases, to conclusively investigate them and lead to more prosecution. Yeah,
gaps exist. My colleagues spoke about some of the gaps. I want to begin with the religious, cultural, societal. It's a very big thorn in our skin that even when we have good legal framework, we have good systems in place, the people managing the legal framework, the people managing these systems are from a given religious perspective, are from a given cultural perspective. Once we don't unpack those religious things and cultural things, we still find whatever we as the police are supposed to effect may not work. Including us, the police officers, we are also from those religious and cultural perspectives that if a child came, a case is reported, she's about 17 years and she's pregnant. An officer may even say, how old are you? 17 years. No, but you're already a woman. For us, 17 years, you're already a woman. That is I'm just giving an example. That can happen. That officer is speaking from the other perspective. I'm talking about culture, religion. So we need to, with sensitization and awareness raising, that can be worked upon. So the coordination among all the stakeholders, we need to gang up and do more of the awareness raising.
We have had also in situations where police officers actually invite the families to sit them down and tell them this can be handled. Let's sort this out. They even encourage their aggrieved family, and they tell them the other person is actually suggesting that you sort this matter out. And it has been pointed out in some reports.
That is very unfortunate. That is unprofessional, and it is the least thing a police officer can do. It's the least thing a police officer can do, because we are meant to protect, respect, and promote the rights of this child. Now, are we promoting, respecting, and promoting the rights by abetting the crime itself? That is impunity. I think that is unfortunate if it's true. In such a situation, if it is proven, I believe that's where you'd head. If the officer is proven, that is, of course, that is PSU to handle that really. That is not right. It's unprofessional. But in any situation, this officer is supposed to pursue justice, help this survivor pursue justice. But like Council said it, many times cases of defilement, if not aggravated, even in aggravated cases, you will always read it, they will come and report. When it's reported, there will be certain factors in there. Who is involved? The son of so and so. Then the other part may be willing to talk it out. Then
phone calls begin.
Phone calls come in. Before you know, either the victim, the victim can even disappear. You trace for the victim. Those are the cases you hear pending, acquitted, and you can't. It's making life hard and work hard.
There's no complainant. They say there's no
complainant. It's a system. So once one party doesn't play what they're supposed to play, this survivor suffers. And by the way, many times when this survivor, when there is compensation, Kenneth, the survivor does not benefit. No. The survivor does not benefit. It is always the caregivers. Somewhere, the colleague from Ministry of Education said it. Many times the perpetrators in these teenage pregnancies are close relatives.
Or associates.
It's a guardian, it's an uncle, a friend of the uncle, a friend of the father, a friend of the brother, a teacher, a police officer, maybe a suspect is there, a victim, a survivor. There are always people who are closer to these people. So they are very vulnerable. And by the time it happens to them, it takes them by surprise. They least expect. Children want protection. So when the person they expect to protect them betrays their trust, they are broken. That is where Council said that they end up fearing. They even fail to understand now, who should I trust? If the least person I trusted cannot do that, can't protect me. So it's we are doing a lot more of the awareness raised on ourselves as officers. First of all, they say charity begins at home. On ourselves as officers, I must speak to myself as Esther, and then speak to other officers, then spread the gospel outside.
All right. Councillor Geraldine, one of the issues that keeps coming up as far as access to justice is concerned, and even reflecting on the number of cases that have been successfully prosecuted, is the manner in which sexual offense-related cases are actually handled. Earlier you hinted about the complex situation of the court. But how can we, make court more accessible for people to be able to have such cases handled effectively, so that we can send the signal to the would-be perpetrators never to do such things again?
I think that one thing that needs to happen is there needs to be, it's already happening, but needs to be promoted further, is training of staff that are involved in the criminal justice system, right from police, where the person will have first contact, up to the courts. Prosecution staff, lawyers, to be more sensitive with the handling of these cases, to not ask embarrassing questions, to be mindful of how the contact between the accused person, the victim, to be mindful of the stigmatized state and vulnerable state that this person is already in. We can have faster prosecutions, faster investigation. It helps so that this person is exposed less. Faster prosecution, faster trials, we can have sexual and gender-based violence cases had, say, using circuits so that they're handled much faster. And then at that time, there will be more emphasis and more attention paid to the way the trial is done, as opposed to when it is done one case now, then another case dealing with something else, chicken theft, another next case of fraud. But if we have these circuits that are handling sexual and gender-based violence, then we can provide better justice for these victims. So we can also have one thing that I think needs to be done. Also, we have to. Esther talked about compensation and how it doesn't go back to the victim. But I think that the Penal Code does provide for compensation for victims of some of these sexual offences. But I think that our courts should encourage more compensation also for victims of sexual violence. Then there are other things that we can do as well to mitigate for these girls that are getting pregnant and generally victims of sexual violence. We need to have more education and sensitization around the laws and what remedies are there, what institutions are in place, and what kind of help and remedies that they can seek from each of these criminal justice institutions. I think it's important that we continue to encourage our children, not just the girl child, but the boy, to stay at school for as long as possible, because we know that is
protective.
It's protective. It's like a contraceptive of sorts. It's helping us. Then we also need to find a way to put in place strategies to help these girls to manage the risks from the prevention side, but also what they can do when they are already pregnant and what they can do after pregnancy, including going back to school. And I know that Ministry of Education now allows girls to go back, but we also know that in our communities there are still schools and individuals which are making it very hard for these girls to go back to school, as well as our society generally. And we absolutely need to address the cultural and traditional norms and practices that we have in our communities, because until we address those ones, because if the people at home, the people in the community, the people at the school, the people at the police, the people in the courts, the prosecutors have negative attitude, we are not going to be able to fight this thing.
All right. We have some comments coming in. One, Benon Fetri Namaskot writes in and says, I'm wondering how the module on sexuality education was crafted without stakeholders' engagement. We have another comment coming in from another listener. Even those in studio are beating around the bush. In my class 2, P6 girls got married because they were tired of sleeping angry at their father's home. Food and pads are bought for school-going children. Many girls, don't you think many girls would be saved? Well, those seem to be direct comments that are coming to you, Minister of Education and Sports. But also the issue of girls staying more in school has come up, because we know when girls drop out, they are easily married off. What policy is in place to actually ensure these girls stay much longer in school? If you can respond very quickly, time is not...
Okay, I earlier on mentioned policy, but somebody is indicating that there was no consultation. Indeed, that person has very less information about the process that led to the development of that framework. There was reasonable consultation, only that for any policy development, not all the 45 million Ugandans are called. So the few who represented different constituencies actually went along to propose, but there's an opening for more input and guidance. Otherwise, quickly, what is Minister of Education doing? Quite a lot. And your question was that what are we even doing with the sister ministries? And the sister ministries in this case will be Minister of Health, Minister of Gender, Minister of Local Government, Minister of ICT, because there's also a lot coming from online, from the police officer submissions. There's also a lot coming from online. So we are doing a lot that is in our mandate, including providing age-appropriate information on growth and development, information that is scientifically accurate, information that is morally acceptable, and making it sure that because majority of our schools are religious founded, we stick to the moral principles and the moral teachings of those religions that are found in different schools. We're also doing a lot of dialoguing, especially with the district authorities and communities down there to understand their role. We are trying to involve parents, working with Minister of Gender. We even developed a parenting guideline, but we have also developed parenting standards and a curriculum that can be followed to remind the parents about their roles. We are doing a lot of provision of IEC materials that are relevant to this subject. We are doing guidance and counseling. It is compulsory for every school to have a teacher in charge of guidance and counseling. It is also compulsory for every school to have a senior woman teacher and a senior man teacher. We encourage schools to invite external facilitators. We encourage safe corners. We encourage seeking information. If you went down to our schools, you'll find that the compounds are also talking, and one of the most dominant messages is around HIV, around teenage pregnancy, around violence against children. We are trying to disseminate the existing policies so that people can understand them. And we have also gone online. We have developed a number of portals where we can reach out to the young people. Now that the Gen Zs prefer more of being online, but we also continue to collaborate in terms of multi-sectoral as well as improving our data. You must have heard that the MEC is being improved to also capture a few indicators around school development. Re-entry guidelines we already explained. Psychosocial support on a daily. We are working with so many partners. I may not mention the list here. So many, including UN Family, to ensure we reach out to the different institutions and deliver the message of teenage pregnancy. Right. And we continue to call upon all stakeholders. Nobody can blame one sector for this challenge. We want the religious leaders to play their part. They have a role, a very big one, because we know once they speak, people take their word as gospel truth. Yes. Once they speak, we know they are the leaders of knowledge. And once they speak, what they speak is spiritual.
All right. We have a comment coming in from Doreen, and she's asking, if I suspect that my child has had sex and is at risk of getting pregnant, is it okay for me to administer a contraceptive? There are so many available interventions, including, what is she calling? Emergency contraceptives that can prevent a girl from getting pregnant. Please advise. That's a comment coming in from Doreen there. And I'll begin with you, Jocelyn. Geraldine, if you can give us your comment on that, on the issue of contraceptives. Then we have another person writing in, Jimmy, listening in from Kanyanya, who says, I guess as authorities look into protection and prosecutions, poverty also needs to be addressed. Where you have seen victims opting for out-of-court settlements, it's one of the biggest challenges. Then another comment, but this is about access to justice. Somebody says there was a proposal to have a legal law in the country, but it was rejected. So how do we address the gap to ensure access to justice? Well, those are some of the comments that are coming in very quickly, but let's address them as we come towards the end of this show. I'll begin with you, Geraldine, with your comment on the issue of contraceptives.
I don't know what you want me to say. I would say that I think that in every home we have rules and regulations, not regulations, but we have rules and we have practices in every home. And I think that it should really be up to each parent to see and discuss with their child and within the home and see what works, what they think will be the best route to take with their child. If they think that their child needs to be put on contraceptive, I think that is the decision that the parent should be able to make.
All right. Yeah. Madam Police Officer?
Of course, the first contraceptive in this case in courts would be abstinence. Only if that has failed and you pass that point, then I think that the parents should be able to make the decision that they think is in the best interest of the child.
Afanda Deke.
Yes, please.
On that issue of contraceptives.
Of course, the parent said she suspects the child should have had an encounter.
If she suspects the child has had an encounter,
would advise that parent go to seek medical attention as immediate as possible. This child can be saved. Actually, there are provisions for that. Take an HCG test. On top of the contraceptives, that parent is focusing on only contraceptives. This child, other than pregnancy, may be getting exposed to HIV and AIDS. So normally we would advise that parent even now to take that child as fast as possible. And that takes me to something very critical.
Very quickly.
In sexual offenses, especially teenage pregnancies, forensic evidence is very important. Please, let's emphasize taking these children to, if these survivors or victims, for medical attention. And that helps the police a lot.
All right.
We as the police, we have a GBV toll-free line.
Okay, if you can read it very
quickly. The
quickly.
GBV toll-free line is 0800-199-195. That GBV violence against children toll-free line, you just call it anytime.
All right.
It's a system that we put in place to try to mitigate the challenges. Council said people fear to reach the police. Call on that line.
I'm afraid we have to bring this discussion to a close. Let me thank you very much, dear guests, for making time to be with us here in studio, and you, the listeners, for contributing.
The public may also need to know another toll-free line on violence against children, which is the 116.
The 116, the Saudi line.
The Saudi line.
Yes.
They can get a lot.
Tomorrow, 2 hours of analysis of the top events of the week. With me here in studio, we wish you a good evening.
It's time.